With all the recent discourse about Josh Giddey, his play, and what it could mean for the Chicago Bulls going forward and the contract that they could give him, we'll talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about why the Chicago Bulls settling for the plan has really been the ultimate doom for the team, even more than some of the bad contracts that they've given out. And we're going to preview tonight's game against the Raptors. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And I want to start off talking about this, right? And I know it's been a lot of Josh Giddey topics around here lately, but I think this is probably going to be the last one for a while, right? There's been a large discourse between Bulls fans that I've seen both on social media and, of course, in the comment section of this and other content creators as well over the Josh Giddey contract, right? And what that could mean. Now, I know that with this recent stretch, it's kind of drummed all that back up, understandably so. And you have your Bulls fans who are like, well, this is just a hot streak. Let's calm down a little bit on it. And I've said before, that's a fair way to look at it. That's a level-headed way to look at it, is say, let's not let one stretch. And here's the thing. I don't think any front office is going to allow a hot stretch of basketball to be the determining factor over years' worth of data on a contract overall value. Now, I do think that Josh Giddey finishing this season strong is definitely going to strengthen or whatever the case or the view that the Chicago Bulls have on, hey, this guy can continue to develop and grow, right? And I think that's the thing, right? But Giddey is definitely on a hot stretch right now. And the things, like I talked about in yesterday's episode, is what's sustainable about this going forward. But that's not really what I want to talk about, right? I want to talk about the contract extension for Josh Giddey. Now, in no way am I advocating for the Chicago Bulls to just give Josh Giddey any amount of money he wants. I still think smart money is to let the market set its value, right? Let him go out there and meet with other teams. Let him find out what that market is. And the reason why I say that is because the Bulls have bet against themselves in the past. And a lot of times when AK bets against himself, that's actually when he's made some bad deals. Now, I do think the Kobe White deal is a really good deal. The Iota Sumu deal was a really good deal. I think Alex Caruso's deal was a steal as well when they got him. I think when you look at the production we got out of DeMar DeRozan, that was a hell of a deal as well. Now, we didn't necessarily have the success winning in having DeMar DeRozan, but I think that a lot of Bulls fans are starting to conflate how restrictive Zach LaVine's contract was and are automatically projecting that onto Josh Giddey, and it's not the same situation at all. Zach LaVine was on a max contract, which is well more than anything that Josh Giddey can make. On top of that, when you look at that, that was a Bulls team that literally had just spent 3 first-round picks, a bunch of assets trying to build around Zach LaVine. They were going to give him any money, the most money possible. And Zach LaVine was going to get the max even if he had went into unrestricted free agency. Now, the max for other teams would have been a little bit less than what the Bulls eventually paid him, but it is what it is, right? And I think that is now, you have so many Bulls fans like, we don't want the Zach LaVine situation. We should want the Zach LaVine situation. Zach LaVine was in a situation where we had just added 3 players, actually, when you count in Lonzo Ball, making over $20 million a year, right? And the Bulls in the contract situation that they're currently in is that we have no $20 million contracts after next season. None. Not a single one. And a matter of fact, we have no contracts other than having like 4 players under contract after 2026. We have complete and open reign. Now, again, I'm not saying that to advocate to mean that we should just spend any money and spend it stupidly, but I'm saying that we aren't really at any point where a $25 to even $28 million contract is going to be hugely restricted for the Chicago Bulls. If you look at it, going into the 2026-27 season, the Chicago Bulls have $169 million below the first tax apron. And then the following year, 211. The year after that, 242. And the reason why I point that out to say that is this Bulls team is not going to be a team that has anybody on this roster that's going to qualify for a supermax, right? Unless you thought that, it's not really going to be restrictive. A $28 million, even if it is on the high end, let's just say high end, $28 million, which again, that is what it is. That's like 16 to 17% of your salary cap. It's not restrictive. So those that are trying to communicate about it, like, well, we don't want to give we don't want to give Josh Giddey this contract because it can hurt our flexibility going forward. It won't. And if you look at it and say this, right, if the Bulls become, if the Bulls, right, and I say this as a big if the Bulls become a contender within the next 5 years, that would mean that a young player on a rookie scale deal has transcended to a star or superstar status, one or maybe two of them. The next player that we have on our roster that could possibly get a max level contract off of a rookie deal is Matas Buzelis, and we got another 4 years before we have to worry about that of him coming off his rookie scale deal. Over the next few years, we're trying to build with draft picks, meaning that those players are going to be on cost-effective and controlled contracts going forward. Now, the only other players that you're really looking at that could get extensions for the Chicago Bulls, Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, right? We're looking at those two guys. Even if they do, let's just say for some reason they max out. Let's say that, and they're not, right? Let's say that Coby and Ayo both get their maxes as well, right? You look at that. The Bulls still then, even then, would still be, depending on what they add, $30 to $40 million below the first tax apron, as long as they don't sign any long-term big money contracts. Again, this conversation isn't about what amount Josh Giddey makes or not, or whether he's earned it or not. It's just to say that the people who have made this conversation about, oh, we don't want to lose long-term cap flexibility, we got long-term cap flexibility, right? This Bulls team is not going to sign some super max level player, some max level player, because again, we're bad, right? And even if a player does say, oh, no, the Bulls are the only one that I'm going to want to go to in free agency, we're going to have the flexibility to get those guys. So I get it, and this goes back to kind of the blind Josh Giddey hate. People want to talk about things like and that's with Patrick Williams, $18 million, right? I just told you, even if we do max out Ayo and Coby, which it's highly unlikely that we do, but even if we do get to that point, that's still there. And by the time Matas Buzelis could theoretically be up for a max, the most money the longest term contract that Josh Giddey can sign is 5 years. It'll be on the last year of Josh Giddey's deal by then, right? And so you still have that flexibility. Either way you cut it, with the place that the Bulls are currently in right now, right? And that's right now, the place that the Bulls are in, the money isn't the issue. Now, like I said, I do want AK and Eversley to play this smart in regards to the contract that they give Josh Giddey. But this conversation was more built around the fear mongers that try to say, well, we don't want to be affected by. It's not going to happen, right? It's just not going to happen. Lonzo's contract's $10 million next year. Vooch is the only over $20 million contract we have. He's off the books. The Bulls, as we talked about, have 5 expiring contracts next year. Kevin Huerter, Zach Collins, Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu. Trey Jones is off this year, right? I think I said Nikola Vucevic, if I didn't say that. So it's not yet at that place, right? Even if the Bulls extend Julian Phillips, extend Dalen Terry, extend Coby White, extend Ayo Dosunmu, extend Josh Giddey, we still are going by time again. It's time to where we can worry once again about the cap situation, and this is probably where Jerry wants it. We'll be fine. So, it's that aspect of things. I've seen so many people go back and forth on it and not taking a step back to really zoom out. Now, as far as Josh Giddey and whether you see him as, whatever you see him as, is the type of player. We are in a rebuild, right? I don't give a damn what AK said. Okay, cool. You want to contend, you want to fight for the play-in, that's great. We'll talk about that here in a second. But this is the opportunity you want to take on 22-year-old players. That's what this time period is for, right? It's to see what can you have. And players that young, can they grow their game under you, right? That just is what it is. So this is the time period to be experimental. This is the time period to try to see what you can develop and what can stick to the wall. This is what this time period is for. I know that it sucks, right? But there's not a world in which, unless somebody ascends to a superstar level, that the Bulls are in any true level of competitiveness. Again, I look at competitiveness as the ability to win a playoff series, right? That you have a legitimate chance to win a playoff series, being favored coming into that series. So because of that, it's like, hey, where we are right now, and like I said before, it really sucks to a degree, but this is where this team is right now. This is where, as a franchise, we are. And we're not coming out of this anytime soon, unfortunately. No, the Bulls aren't trading for LaMelo Ball. For those that keep pushing that, shout out to my boy Vaughn, I love you. They're not trading for LaMelo Ball. It's not happening. That's not going to happen. Rap God unloaded as the crackhead he is. I love him too, love him to death. This ain't going to turn into the Ball family show. It's not happening, right? Lonzo Ball may not even be here after next season. We'll see how that goes as well. So, like, it's just everybody, I think, just has to calm down. And much like we want AK and Eversley to embrace and be aware and realize where we are, the fans got to as well, right? You got to as well. But with that said, I want to talk a little bit about the Bulls. And I know that it's been another hot button topic. And I've said it before, Bulls social media is about as toxic as Bears social media was during the Caleb Williams and Justin Fields debates. But the Bulls are probably going to end up with the 10 seed. Now, they're going to do so stumbling in. They may be a team that makes the 10 seed with less than 30 wins. That's a real possibility here for the Chicago Bulls. A real possibility. Now, it depends on some other things and how they end up shaking out. Right now, we got a 1.5 game lead over the Brooklyn Nets, a 2.5 game lead it's now up to a 2.5 game lead up to, against the Philadelphia 76ers. But when it comes down to this, right, I think that the Bulls and their love of the play-in over the last, 2 years, I think we've made the play-in. We're on pace to make it for a third straight year this year, has been the ultimate undoing of the team. And I said this before, right, that the play-in was created, at least in the way that it was communicated, to give teams a chance to make the playoffs that barely missed out on it. And it was more so geared towards if you had some injuries early in the season, if you made a mid-season trade, if you just had a team that was gelling late or went through some early season adversity, but it was a good team, you still have a chance. And the dangerous part of that is that teams that looked at the play-in as a goal, right? The play-in as hey, we're right there because we made the play-in. And that's where the Bulls have really disappointed their fan base and confused themselves, is by falling in love over the last 2 years, now 3, with making the play-in. Now, the benefit about this year is that we own our own pick outright and we're a much younger team. But with the Bulls and where they've been, right? And you heard things like last season where maybe the Bulls, even though it was kind of debunked by Casey Johnson, but maybe the Bulls didn't look to move off of Andre Drummond or move off of Alex Caruso because of some mandate to make the play-in, right? Some goal to make the play-in. That's where the Bulls hurt themselves at repeatedly. Because had you moved off, and this is something we've talked about a lot, moved off of DeMar or Alex Caruso or Andre Drummond, right? More so at the trade deadline last year to try to fight for a play-in that you weren't going to make it out of anyway, despite some amazing play in that first game from Kobe White, you would have gotten more assets back. So the Bulls continually find themselves in a place where they are behind the 8 ball repeatedly, mainly due to their own hubris and their own inability to really recognize where this team truly stands at. And that's the place where this is so hurtful and detrimental to the Chicago Bulls, right? And that's where AK and Eversley and their evaluation and their continued how unaware they are about where the team really has been over the last couple of years still worries a lot of fans, right? And I get it. He said after the trade deadline, he talked about playoffs and being able to compete with a team full of 9 really good guys. And it continues just to show that disconnect that Arturas Karnisovas has with his fan base and really just in the NBA overall, and why he may be in over his head as an exec, because he just does not seem to really get where his team and where his franchise is amongst other operating teams in the NBA. And that's something that is scary, right? And going forward, right, and I know that the Bulls, and I see it every day, any Bulls win, everybody has a whole panic on, but, it is what it is, right? The Bulls have 1 win in 20 now, I think it's like 23 days, right? And we'll see if they can get a win today against the Toronto Raptors. But overall, there's so much left to be desired for this Bulls team. There's so much left to be desired to see where this team can really and truly and honestly go. So, we'll see what the future does hold for the Bulls. Overall, I'll say this, right? And this is where I'll leave it, is that the Chicago Bulls and their front office is they have to at some point wake up and smell the roses, wake up and smell the coffee, whatever analogy you want to use there. They got to come to the realization of where they truly are. And the Bulls are in the bottom, right? When people have been saying for long, the Bulls are in the middle of the pack, we're in the middle of the pack team, we're in the middle of the pack team. No, we're at the bottom, but we don't realize we're at the bottom. But no matter what way you want to look at that, right? We're not competing, but we're super bad, right? But you have this front office that has really, and this is another thing, part of the reason why the Zach LaVine trade could end up being a trade that doesn't work well, that ultimately is the Bulls not getting the better of it, isn't because we got our first-round pick back, isn't even because Kevin Huerter and Zach Collins may not be solid players, right, as well with Trey Jones, but it's because if you came to a realization really on and just embraced the fact that your team sucked, you could have kept your pick regardless because you could have been that bad. This team is damn near that bad, right? But, we'll see what the future holds. Like, AK and Eversley have missed on basically every evaluation that they've made on the place of the team. We'll talk about contracts here towards the offseason. And as they continue to miss on that evaluation, the thing that they more importantly can't miss on is the next upcoming draft picks. Now, my brother Pat, the designer, has talked about, well, if the Bulls get a top pick, that means that AK and Eversley were right. No, it does not. It does not mean that they were right by any stretch of the imagination. It means that they lucked into something, but that doesn't mean that they were right. Meaning that they were right in the sense that, we just keep competing for the play. No, you got lucky, right? Now, the Atlanta Hawks were another team in the play-in last year. We eliminated them. You're welcome. They got the first overall pick, but how often is that going to happen? We'll see. This is a deep draft where the Bulls can get talent, right? And regardless if they win the lottery or not, which I don't have any expectations for them, this is a very, very deep draft class. You got to go out and get the right guy, right? Because you stumble into a right result doesn't mean your process was correct. And that's what it gets down to for the Chicago Bulls. Because then, like I said before many times, it's not just about getting the talent. If you do get it right and get a talent, how do you build around them? How do you develop them? Do you have the right coaching? Can you develop the right team around them? Can you put the right pieces around them? And that just starts the conversation if this happens. So AK and Eversley, I keep going back because they are the guys, even more so than ownership. And I know that, we have our Bulls fans who are like, owner. And the real thing of it is that the Reinsdorfs let AK and Eversley cook. They're the chefs. Yeah, they're owners, and having a better ownership group that is more focused on winning would absolutely help eliminate people. But then you still have a hands-off ownership group, so if they can't hire the right people, then we'll just be right back in the same cycle, right? So AK and Eversley got to wake up if we're going to get out of this rut. And if they don't, I guess we'll see what the future does hold. Now, the Bulls do have a game today against the Toronto Raptors. This is a team that the Toronto Raptors right now sit at 13th, in the Eastern Conference. They're technically 5 games back of the Chicago Bulls of that 8 seed. They're 2-8 in their last 10. There was some thought after the trade deadline moves that they made, they could actually be trying to win out here. I don't see any evidence of that, right? But this is another game that is important for the standings of the Eastern Conference as well. And we'll see what the Bulls can do. Now, the Raptors are a team that sit at basically the same level of the Bulls. They have talent on their roster as well. The fit isn't always there. They have a player that's remained to be injured. We don't even know if he's going to play during the rest of the season or not, right? They gave him a contract extension. What's up with that? But, coming into this game today, right, it seems like Garrett Temple's going to be out. Scotty Barnes is questionable for this game, so we'll see what the results are there. But overall, I'll say this, man. This team right now has so much that they have left that they need to do. And coming in this game against the Raptors, I just really want to see just another fun game, right? Another fun game in which the Bulls come in, they compete, they play hard, and they play with some heart and some determination. That's really what this comes down to for the Chicago Bulls team. Can you play with heart? If you lose, you see, listen, the Bulls have lost a lot of games lately, but do you see it is not as down on the Chicago Bulls it was early in the season because this team's actually playing with heart. That's all I want to see. The continued growth, to see if Josh Giddey can keep up a streak, to see if Matas Buzelis can play tough again, right? To see that, to see this team continue to play and play together as a team. This looks like a team that's having fun playing together. And that's an important piece of all this, because if we could clearly see they're having fun, they're giving effort, they're fighting hard, that's something that we all need to do, right? That's just what it comes down to, man. And so we'll see what happens when it comes down to that. Overall, we'll continue monitoring to the game. Steve-O got you covered on the post-game show. No pregame or halftime hangout, from what I'm being told, just with his schedule. I'm out, got to take care of family business, but I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.